Start recording. Here we go. Create. Perfect. The question being asked is create a program that asks the user for 3 numbers and determines the smallest, the largest, and the middle. Okay. 3 numbers someone's going to have to type in. So I am going to have to make 3 asks. Correct? Right? Ask 1 number, 2 numbers, and 3 numbers. Also going to have to make 3 variables. Gonna need to store them because I'm gonna have to constantly be referring back to them. So I better have a place where they're being stored in the computer. And so I'm gonna make 3 variables. Okay. Now, give me a number. Give me 1 number, 2 numbers, 3 numbers, whatever. You know you can duplicate code too, watch. Right click on it, hit duplicate. Right click on it, hit duplicate. Oops. Could save you some time, so I don't actually have to make all 3 there. Okay. When I type in the first one, I'm going to set num1 to answer, so on and so forth. I'll probably duplicate that as well. Getting kind of busy here. Set num2 to answer. And duplicate that. Didn't mean to duplicate that. I want to actually just duplicate this orange one. Let's have a look. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Seems complicated, but it's actually just a repeat of 2 lines of code. One that asks a question, and a second that sets a variable to whatever they type. So let's have a look at the primitive, basic example of what this will do. Give me a number, 40. Give me another number, 50. Give me a third number, 60. Basically, I've just got the ability to say 40, 50, and 60 in the computer. And that's it so far. Okay. How do I get back to my program? Right there. Perfect. Okay. How do I check which number is the biggest? I'm going to go to my control command. And I'm going to check out the if commands here, right there. Okay. There is a couple of ways that number 1 can be the biggest. Let's think about it. Okay. This is a greater than symbol. Okay. So I'm going to write if number 1 is bigger than number 2. Like that. But I also, and we haven't talked about this yet, but there is an AND command here, right here. Okay? And what the AND command allows you to do is check multiple conditions. The first condition being that number 1 is bigger than number 2, and it actually fits in there. Notice it takes in 6-sided blocks. The other thing I want to check is that number 1 is bigger than number 3. Okay? If that is the case, try to convince yourself that number 1 will be the biggest number, the first number they type in. Because if it's bigger than the second and bigger than the third, it has to, by process of elimination, be the biggest number. So I could go under looks and say something like, your first number is the biggest. Okay? And I have basically one option set in my program. It won't work if any other number, like if the second or third number is the biggest, this won't work. But I can make a second if statement. I can actually just duplicate this one. So let's have a look and run it first and test it. So I'm going to write 60 for my first number, 50 for my second number, and 40 for my third number. It did work. Your first number is the biggest. He said it. Okay? You all witnessed it, hopefully. Let's try it again. 70, 10, and minus 1,000. Your first number is the biggest. That if statement condition was being met. Number 1 was bigger than number 2, and number 1 was bigger than number 3. Now, if I run it and I type in for my biggest number, let's say I type number 1 is 10, but now number 2 is the biggest number at 70, and number 3 is minus 14. He doesn't do anything. Okay? There's no condition that's true for the code to run. So if I want to run it so that it will check if number 2 is the biggest, I can duplicate this entire code. Here, I can put number 2 is bigger than number 1. And number 2 is bigger than number 3. Then I would write your second number is the biggest. Okay. So it's going to only be 3 if statements, but they're kind of complicated, busy. Okay. Let me try that now and see if it works for me typing in the second number as the biggest. So I'll type in 10, I'll type in 90, and I'll type in 80. Your second number is the biggest. It worked, okay? So finish that off and make sure you have an if statement for your third number being your biggest. You can even leave yourself little notes, I think. Add a comment. If you ever want to add a comment, you could say checking first number, something like that. Just helps you later organize your code. You don't have to do that, but I find it helpful sometimes, especially not in these smaller programs, but then I come here and I make another comment checking second number, because it's not always clear what every little block of code is doing and so on and so forth. So you can add little comments to yourself if you would like. Okay, so try that for the smallest number as well. The smallest number is very similar to the finding the biggest number, and then the middle number is a little harder, because the middle number you actually need 6 if statements. So work through that and see if you can figure it out, and maybe we'll go over it a little later, but I think it's worth trying on your own for sure. Okay.